Chapter 23. Active and Passive Voice. Read the following sentences. Rahul wrote the story. The story was written by Rahul. In the first sentence, Rahul, the subject, is the doer. The sentence is said to be in the active voice. A verb is said to be in the active voice when the subject does the action. In the second sentence, something is done to the story. The subject, the story, here is not the doer of the action but the receiver. The verb form was written is in the passive voice. The form of the verb which shows that the subject is the receiver of an action is called passive voice. Active voice. In active voice, the sentence begins with the subject of an action and the object is at the end of the sentence as it is acted upon. This means the subject is of prime importance or is active in the sentence. Hence, the structure is as follows: subject plus verb plus object. Examples: Suman writes a letter. Some girls were helping their teacher. Passive voice. In passive voice, the sentence begins with the object and the subject is at the end. Hence, here object gets more importance and the subject is passive. Examples: Donuts are loved by everyone. The wounded woman was being helped by some girls. The verb should be in accordance with the object in the passive voice. The passive voice is used when the doer is understood, when the doer is unknown, when the speaker does not want to specify the doer of the action he or she is speaking about. How to change the active into the passive voice? While changing sentences from the active to passive voice, the rules below are followed. Rule 1. When changing an active statement into a passive one, the object of the active sentence becomes the subject of the passive sentence. Examples: Sumit wrote the story. The story was written by Sumit. In the passive voice, the subject of the active sentence becomes the agent and we add by before it to show that it is still the doer of the action. To change the verb into the passive, an appropriate form of the verb be is added before the main verb, which takes on the form of the past participle. Passive voice: be plus past participle of the main verb. Rule 2. Only transitive verbs can be changed into the passive, as intransitive verbs have no object. Examples: Reena threw the ball. The ball was thrown by Reena. Teacher's note: the verb should be in accordance with subject in active voice. The active voice is simpler in structure than the passive voice. It is often preferred in speech and writing. Reena walks fast. Fast was walked by Reena. Incorrect. Rule 3. If a transitive verb has two objects, either of them can be made the subject in the passive voice, and the other remains unchanged. Examples: The shopkeeper gave some vegetables to me. Some vegetables were given to me by the shopkeeper. Or, I was given some vegetables by the shopkeeper. Rule 4. In the passive voice, the verb is changed according to the subject in number and person. Examples: active: he broke this table, singular. Passive: this table was broken by him, singular subject, singular verb. Active: he broke these toys, plural. Passive: these toys were broken by him, plural subject, plural verb. Rule 5. When a verb is changed from active to passive, the tense of the verb remains the same. In the simple present tense, the verb forms is, am, are used before the past participle. Examples: Ariba plays hockey. Hockey is played by Ariba. In the present continuous tense, the verb forms is being, am being, are being are used along with the past participle. Examples: Amaya is playing hockey. Hockey is being played by Amaya. In the present perfect tense, the verb forms has been or have been are used before the past participle. Examples: Ashutosh has played hockey. Hockey is being played by Ashutosh. In the simple past tense, the verbs was and were or are used before the past participle. Examples: Levi played hockey. Hockey was played by Levi. In the past continuous tense, the verb form was being or were being are used before the past participle of the verb. Examples: Surya was playing hockey. Hockey was being played by Surya. In the past perfect tense, the verb form had been is used before the past participle of the verb. Examples: Anshika had played hockey. Hockey had been played by Anshika. Change of tense in active and passive voice. The verb should be in accordance with object in passive voice. Look at the table below and observe how the tense and person changes in a sentence when converted from active to passive. Tense or modal plus base, active voice, passive voice. Simple tense. Present, active voice, beat or beats, passive voice, is, as, are beaten. Past, beat, was or were beaten. Future, shall or will beat, shall or will be beaten. Continuous tense. Present, am, is, are beating. Am, is, are being beaten. Past, was or were beating. Was or were being beaten. Future, shall or will be beating. Not applicable. Perfect tense. Present, has or have beaten. Have or has been beaten. Past, had beaten. Had been beaten. Future, shall or will have beaten. Shall or will have been beaten. Perfect continuous tense. Present, past, not applicable. Future, can or may or must plus base. Can, may, must beat. Can, may, must be beaten. Change of person. Active voice, I. Passive, me. We, us. You, you. She, her. He, him. They, them. Any name. Name remains as it is. Present tense. Simple present form. Active, subject plus root form of the verb plus object. Passive, object plus is, am, are plus past participle form of the verb. Examples: She plucks flowers from the plant. Active voice. Flowers are plucked from the plant by her. Passive voice. Madhur offers her a flower. Active voice. She is offered a flower by Madhur. Passive voice. Do they perform fine arts? Active voice. Are fine arts performed by them? Passive voice. What does she ask? Active voice. What is asked by her? Passive voice. Where does Historia keep the book? Active voice. Where is the book kept by Historia? Passive voice. Present continuous form. Active, subject plus is, am, are plus ing form of the verb plus object. Passive, object plus is, am, are plus being plus past participle form of the verb. Examples: Viren is making a painting. Active voice. A painting is being made by Viren. Passive voice. The committee is announcing the results in a few minutes. Active voice. The results are being announced by the committee in a few minutes. Passive voice. The student is not heeding his instructions. Active voice. His instructions are not being heeded by the student. Passive voice. What is Ashruti doing? Active voice. What is being done by Ashruti? Passive voice. When are Mr. and Miss Bansal inaugurating their showroom? Active voice. When is their showroom being inaugurated by Mr. and Mrs. Bansal? Passive voice. Present perfect form. Active, subject plus has or have plus past participle form of the verb plus object. Passive, object plus has or have plus been plus past participle form of the verb plus by plus subject. Examples: Arpita has forgotten his name. Active voice. His name has been forgotten by Arpita. Passive voice. The editor has strongly criticized his opinions. Active voice. His opinions have been strongly criticized by the editor. Passive voice. Have they won the match? Active voice. Has the match been won by them? Passive voice. Where has Sagrika studied law? Active voice. Where has law been studied by Sagrika? Passive voice. How many marks has Sunita scored? Active voice. How many marks have been scored by Sunita? Passive voice. Past tense. Simple past form. Past tense. Simple past form. Active, subject plus past tense of the verb plus object. Passive, object plus past participle form of the verb plus subject. Examples: too many cooks spoiled the broth. Active voice. The broth was spoiled by too many cooks. Passive voice. The mother concocted a plan in order to unveil the neighbors. Active voice. A plan was concocted in order to unveil the neighbor by the mother. Passive voice. Nobody believed her fake stories. Active voice. Her fake stories were believed by nobody. Passive voice. Did you see my book somewhere? Active voice. Was my book seen somewhere by you? Passive voice. Which pen did Mannat give you? Active voice. Which pen was given to you by Mannat? Passive voice. Past continuous form. Active. Subject plus was or were plus ing form of the verb plus object. Passive. Object plus was or were plus being plus past participle form of the verb plus by plus subject. Examples: the strife-torn country was facing a great trouble at that time. Active voice. A great trouble was being faced at that time by the strife-torn country. Passive voice. She was reading a novel by a famous novelist. Active voice. A novel by a famous novelist was being read by her. Passive voice. Kundan was attending the guests at the party last night. Active voice. The guests were being attended at the party last night by Kundan. The guests were being attended by Kundan at the party last night. Passive voice. What were they talking about? Active voice. What was being talked about by them? Passive voice. Where was the man taking you? Active voice. Where were you being taken by the man? Passive voice. Past perfect form. Active. Subject plus had plus past participle form of the verb plus object. Passive, object plus had been plus past participle form of the verb plus by plus subject. Examples: we had watched the show earlier. Active voice. The show had been watched earlier by us. Passive voice. She had informed the police of the incident. Active voice. The police had been informed of the incident by her. Passive voice. The king had never seen his son earlier. Active voice. His son had never been seen earlier by the king. Passive voice. She had stored all the matter before uncle asked her to do so. Active voice. All the matter had been stored by her before uncle asked her to do so. Passive voice. Who had taught them that chapter? Active voice. By whom had they been taught that chapter? Passive voice. Future tense. Simple future form. Active, subject plus shall or will plus root form of the verb plus object. Passive, object plus shall or will plus be plus past participle form of the verb plus by plus subject. Examples: God will shower His blessings on us one day. Active voice. Blessings will be showered on us one day by God. Passive voice. I think they will compel the suspected criminal to surrender. Active voice. I think the suspected criminal will be compelled to surrender by them. Passive voice. Who will win the 2020 World Cup? Active voice. By whom will the 2020 World Cup be won? Passive voice. Arpan will never forgive Dhruv for his mistake. Active voice. Dhruv will never be forgiven for his mistake by Arpan. Passive voice. Why will you allow them to enter? Active voice. Why will they be allowed to enter by you? Passive voice. Future perfect form. Active, subject plus shall or will plus have plus past participle form of the verb plus object. Passive, object plus shall or will plus have been plus past participle form of the verb plus by plus subject. Examples: by this afternoon, you will have realized my importance. Active voice. My importance will have been realized by you by this afternoon. Passive voice. I will have owned my car one day. Active voice. My car will have been owned one day by me. Passive voice. Our scientists will have invented a device for teleportation in future. Active voice. A device for teleportation will have been invented in future by our scientists. Passive voice. What will Saket have achieved in coming 10 years? Active voice. What will have been achieved by Saket in coming 10 years? Passive voice. Who will have received him at the station? Active voice. By whom will he have been received at the station? Passive voice. In passive voice, since object is more important and the sentence starts with it, the verb must be in accordance with it. Examples: Shrikant likes movies. Active voice. Movies are liked by Shrikant. Passive voice. Shrikant and Sunita like movies. Active voice. Movies are liked by Shrikant and Sunita. Passive voice. Teacher's note. The verbs which are used transitively can only be changed into passive voice. Intransitive verbs cannot be changed into passive voice as they do not contain any object. In the first sentence, the subject is singular, and in the second sentence, subject is plural. But irrespective of that, the passive voice of both the sentences will contain plural verbs as the object is plural.